that instead of my cell phone.
Give me a mic check.
On?
Check. Do it again.
Check.
Oh, wait. This isn't on. Go again.
Check.
On?
Check.
Are you on?
Yeah.
Are you good?
What?
Are we good?
Just a second. I'm not on. I have the thing up. I think we're live.
We are?
Just a second. Are we on? Can you guys see anything?
Say when.
Alex says
second.
hello. I think we're good. Video should be on. Just waiting for Ken and Megan to confirm. Oh, Paul says we're good.
We're good.
So we are?
Yeah, we're good.
Yep.
Who's Paul?
Paul Morrison.
Oh, good.
Paul?
Oh, good morning, Paul.
Navy Paul? Oh, yeah, he's in Australia, right.
Top of the morning.
Good day, mate.
Are we ready?
Everybody says that.
Yep, we're going. We're good.
Good?
Yep.
Welcome, folks. This is our, did you just say 17th?
17th.
17th YouTube Live workshop. And I'm actually in the process of making dovetail markers using a shooting board. How coincidental. Tonight we're going to talk about shooting boards. We're going to make one. I'm going to talk to you about using them, why they're such an advantage in the shop. And I'm often quoted as saying that one apparatus that will elevate your work more so than anything else, I should say shop-made apparatus, it's a shooting board. Once you learn how to sharpen a hand plane, that's got to be your next investment. Now this one is made specifically for doing our dovetail markers because we want them to be precise. And I probably have 10 shooting boards around here. So let me introduce you to my one that I use most of the time. And the plane that I choose is the 5.5. So let me tell you what we're going to do tonight. First of all, introductions. I'm Rob Cosman. Behind the camera is Jake. Back there is Frick, the producer. Over here is Ken Anthony. Ken works here with me, makes a lot of the stuff that we produce. And beside Ken is Megan, and Megan, who's officially a landed immigrant now. Permanent resident. Jake's wife. And she does all of the shipping. Jake takes care of some of the website. Luther does the rest of it. Super Dave is taking care of our classes, our Purple Heart and training hand classes for August, September, October. Colonel Luther, who's out in Southern California, he takes care of April, May, and June. Nope. May, June, and July. And we got a lot of people got to mention tonight. First of all, my attire. So last weekend, Jake and I and Super Dave went down to Clarksville, Tennessee, and we did a Friday night meet and greet and a Saturday seminar, dovetails, and setting up and sharpening a hand plane for Danny Bell. And Danny has a business called the Hardwood Grove. It's in Clarksville, so look him up. And he sells hardwood, he offers classes, and he's also kind of the spot we parked Purple Heart in that area. So he brought in somewhere around 40 combat wounded veterans for our class on Saturday so we could introduce them to the program. I wish Luther was here so we could say, but I think we've had about 12, Jake, am I exaggerating?
No.
That have already signed up or applied for our Purple Heart Scholarship. In case you don't know what that is real quickly, 6 times a year, 1 a month, from the months of May through October. We run now a 6-day class. And when I say 6-day class, I mean we start at 8 in the morning, we run till 11 o'clock at night. And our classroom is out there, which Jake's just about to have the door shut. And we do the classes here. 6 of the spots are for civilians who want to come and learn hand tool woodworking. The other 6 are for combat wounded veterans who have applied by giving us their story. We go through a selection process and we choose 6 for each class. We do a total of 36 each year starting this year. We cover their airfare, their hotel, their meals, and we send each vet home with approximately $3,500 worth of tools. We've increased it for this coming year. We are not government funded. We don't have any major corporate sponsors. We do have Woodcraft that is very generous to us. But most of the funds come from fundraisers that we do and from generous individuals. Somebody just sent me $3,500 a couple of days ago. Thank you very much. And so while I was down there, I met Micah Payne. And Micah, you can zero in on that, Jake, gave me a hat and some merch. And Micah is with the Special Operations Aviation Regiment. These were the guys, if you saw the movie Black Hawk Down, it was about the extraction of military personnel in that intense situation in Mogadishu. I can't remember how many years ago. I guess it would have been in the 90s. I really can't remember. I apologize. But anyway, that was the regiment those were the aviators in that movie. Well, in the real life, but portrayed in the movie. So there's the hat right here. I don't wear ball caps, but I put them right behind me. And we got Angie right keeping an eye on things, making sure everything's going right. Hi, Ange. Now, last time we haven't. So each time we do this, we have a raffle. And tonight, what we're raffling off. So for every $25 that you donate to the Purple Heart Project, I need to tell you that all of that $25 goes to bringing those guys in, paying for hotels, paying for meals, only costs associated with the Purple Heart Project. The only thing that comes out of that is the transaction fee, which is 2 or 3%. So don't donate through YouTube because they take way too much, more than a third. That's why we have it right on our site. So if you go to RobCosman.com, Frick will put the link in. You can go on there and donate any amount that you want. But for every $25 increment, we put your name in the hat once for our draw. Tonight, what we're going to raffle off is the shooting board that we're going to build. Here's an example of it. We sell these on our website. This one just hasn't been sprayed yet. And what do you use on a shooting board? Well, you use my favorite plane, which is the 5.5. So we will sharpen. Oh, this one's already ready to go. This is all set up, ready to go. We'll sign it, and we'll send it off to you. And I'm lifting my restriction where I can send planes for this cause anywhere in the world. Now, in our last one, it was crazy. We did extremely well. We raised $9,600. Our operating costs for this venture, we figured out, is about 200,000 Canadian, which would be about 160, 170 US. So it's a lot of money, but the money finds us. We just do our job, and it comes to us. So we raffled off a Purple Heart saw. And the individual who won it, emailed me shortly after Christmas and said, you know, Rob, I've been thinking about this. This is for such a great cause. I want to give you back the saw and have you auction it off, and I will start the bidding at $1,100, which is very generous of him. So, slight hiccup there. Miscommunication. Megan sent him the saw, so we're going to get it back. So all I have to show you is what the Purple Heart, now this handle is made out of maple that is purple infused resin impregnated. Why the resin impregnation? Well, it increases the weight of the handle by about 50%. It fills all of any air that would be in the wood is replaced with this resin, so it makes it very durable, very strong, almost impervious to moisture, and polishes up unbelievably well. This has just been shaped on the router. It hasn't been sanded yet, so when it's done, it's awesome looking. So thank you very much. So we'll occasionally mention that, and if you're interested in bidding on it, the price is already at $1,100, and all of that will go to the Purple Heart Project. About $3,500 direct cost to to take care of each vet. It's actually probably higher than that now because we actually upped the. I should mention. So Tom Lee Nelson provides us with 2 mortise chisels for each vet every time we do this, and he has agreed to sell me at a discount skew block planes that I use a lot, so we will be able to provide each vet with one of these to take home. And we're also including, this year, we're going to include mortise gauge and cross-cut saw, as well as the dovetail saw and the other tools that we've been doing.
What's the What's the status of the classes right now as far as being filled?
Okay, good question. So status of the class, as far as civilians go. Now, I apologize. We never worry about time. So we have already made our selection for the vets for May, June, and July. And Colonel Luther is working through right now, arranging to see who can come to which class. And when that's the cutoff date for?
June 15.
June 15 is a cutoff date for the selection for vets for August, September, and October. So if you are one or if you know of one, they have until then to submit an application. Applications received after that will be for 2021 starting in April on the civilian side. The May class is full. The June class is full. The July class is full. The August class has 2 spots. The September class has 1 spot. And the October class has 5 or 6 spots. So that's what we have left. I would suspect by the end of February that it'll all be full and we'll start booking for 2021. I'd like to tell you more about the class, but I don't want to take too much time away from what we're going to do tonight.
Quick,
So if you
quick
have any
announcement.
questions, but
I was going to say, quick announcement. You'll be in the Florida Woodcrafts.
oh well,
February.
before that, so real quick, if you're going to be anywhere in the Toronto area, on February 6, 7, and 8 is the Toronto Wood Show, which has been recently revitalized after a hiatus of about 8 years. It's at the International Center, which is near the Toronto Airport, and it's a big show. Jake will be there, I will be there, Super Dave will be there, and Kevin Burris will be there. Kevin is one of our combat wounded vets from a couple of last class. Kevin was severely wounded. Kevin EOD, explosive ordnance disposal, for 22 years. I remember his story pretty well. Blown up so many times, he's lost count. But really good guy. Kevin will be there, and he'll be demonstrating as well as Super Dave. So please, if you're going to be in the area, make sure you at least come by and see us. We'll be doing seminars all day long, all 3 days, right at our booth. They've given us a big booth with chairs and the whole bit. And then after that, we will be in Florida teaching in the Actually, I'll be in Seattle's end of March, right? Be in Florida the last weekend of February, first weekend of March. I'll be at the Orlando store, Woodcraft store, and the other one I will be at the Tampa Woodcraft store. And then the end of March, I'm teaching for 3 days at the Seattle Woodcraft store. That it? If you have any questions about the workshops, whatever, just fire them off. These guys will read your questions out as we go. So we thought we were going to have a local musician come in here and play a couple of original songs on the guitar that was donated to us by Paul Wrigley down in Knoxville, Tennessee. Thank you. And it was produced by the East Tennessee Luthiers Guild. Paul headed that up, and it was great. He made it, donated it to us to sell to raise money for the Purple Heart Project.
He's running late from his date.
He is, but he's going to be here? All right, it'll be a nice little break for you. Okay, so any questions? Where am I going to start? I guess I should tell you a little bit about what a shooting board does and why I talk about it so much and I use it so much. If you are processing a piece of lumber in the process of getting ready to cut a dovetail, here's a piece of maple, and I need to cut dovetails on the end of this board. Well, if you don't already know this, if you want something to turn out to be square, I'll give you a good example. I'm going to grab this drawer that we're working on. This is our standing desk that we are making in our online workshop. So there's dovetails on all corners. So when you're building this drawer, the level of precision is going to determine how nicely it works. Nicely means you should be able to push in from one corner and the drawer will go in without binding. So you process this corner, you put this corner together and this corner together, and then you have to do these last two at the same time. So you butter them all up, you put this one down, and you come over here. If you have to move the two pieces in any direction to get it to line up, you've lost your fit. And that's a long process to explain that, but I'm just telling you, you've lost your fit. It's so satisfying when you look over here and those two pieces are already lined up and it's just a matter of pushing them together. That is rewarding. How do you get that level of precision? You get it with a shooting board.
Sean Caulfield wants to know what the reason is you don't use a shooting board plane.
Oh, that's a good question. I knew somebody would bring that up. And that's what I'm leading into. So I'll answer that when I'm doing this. My option to square up this board would be to plane that edge, and that edge is typically such that you're going to have to come in here and balance your plane. And in the process of doing this, you're balancing the plane this way, and you're also wanting to keep this edge nice and straight. When it comes to doing the end grain, of course, the first thing you have to do is come in here and cut a little chamfer on the back side.
Why?
Well, if you don't, Jake, those fibers out here would break off. Now, what I have to do, and typically the end grain cut is going to be shorter than the long grain, I'm talking about a drawer. I now have to balance the plane this way and this way. So, and by the way, most people would pick up a block plane, but let me tell you something. I don't understand where that ever came from. If I was to ask you which of the 6 surfaces are going to be the most difficult to plane, the long face, the big face on either side, the edges on either side, or the ends, it's going to be the end. The end grain is going to be a harder cut. So why would you choose the lightest plane? The heavier the plane, the easier it is to push through the wood. So I'm up here and I'm having to balance this plane, and I'm going to make that pass until I get that surface nice and clean. Pull off a nice long end grain shaving. Everybody always loves to see that. But here's the difficulty. I'm trying to do 2 things at once. I'm trying to keep it square this way. At the same time, I'm trying to keep it square that way. And you have to be able to do that because there are times that you cannot take the tool to the wood, or you can't take the wood to the tool, you have to take the tool to the wood. However, having a shooting board that you've already built, and the purpose of the shooting board is to keep the plane and the piece of wood at right angles in this direction and at right angles in this direction. If you just go through the work to make it square the first time, every time you use it, you'll benefit from that. You flip it over, I cut my little chamfer, and then you simply plane until that little chamfer disappears. Now you've got, as long as this has been squared up, you've got a nice square edge in both directions. You don't have to check it. By the way, I picked up this piece of wood and it is not even close to being flat. That's why it was flopping around on me. So let me go a little bit further with this. You want your shooting board to remain flat, and that's something I'm going to introduce you tonight as we build one. When you're using a shooting board, and I'm going to work under the assumption that you don't know you've never used one, so you're having to learn this for the first time. When you're using the shooting board, there's several things that you have to do all at the same time. So the more you practice with this, the more natural it becomes. In the process of holding the plane like this, there's not a ton of surface area here, so it's easy to have this thing tip. So you want to keep your hand right over the widest part, and you want to consciously be pushing straight down so as not to lean one way or the other. I remember in teaching people sometimes to get the blade to engage, they would be tipping the plane in like this. You do not want to do that. You must maintain square. So when I take my square and I set it on there, that needs to show square. Of course, the blade has to be parallel to the sole, so when you initially approach to use your shooting board, you've got to check to make sure that your blade is projecting parallel to the sole, and that will produce a square edge. Sometimes you may have to fiddle with it a little bit to get it just right, but once it is, you're good to go. So you've got to keep it standing plumb. The next thing you have to do, in the process of moving forward, you have to make sure that you keep the plane fully engaged with this track on the shooting board. If you don't, the minute you allow it to drift away, you've lost your square setup. So while maintaining plumb, I'm pushing forward and keeping the plane tight this way, so I'm having to pull in somewhat at the same time I'm doing that, forward and back. Now you've got your piece of wood. You need to keep your piece of wood sitting flat on the bench top. If you're not, you're going to lose the square setup. The action of the plane will keep it tight to the fence, so there's no worry there. But you must keep feeding the board into the plane in order for it to cut. The minute you stop doing that, it's not going to cut. So you have to be pushing this way. Now, you cannot push this way harder than you're pushing the plane that way, or else you'll move it away and you'll lose your square setup. So you have to do all of that stuff at the same time, and you do it enough, it becomes natural. You don't have to think about it.
Paul Pinto has a question. David Charlesworth uses cardboard shims to square up the shooting board. How do you keep yours square?
Cardboard shims to square up a shooting board. Now, I know David quite well. I'm not quite sure what he's talking about. Cardboard shims to square up a shooting board. I'm sorry, I don't know what he's referring to. Oh, unless, now, I'm going to answer that the way I think it might need to be answered. This piece of wood is really critical. It needs to be extremely hard. Why? Well, the very nature of using this is it gets slammed quite a bit by the piece you're working on. So if it's a soft wood, it's going to get beat up and possibly knocked out, not knocked out of square, but worn out of square. I have had to go in before, and I would take one of two tools, either a large shoulder plane, because if I'm having to re-square this surface, I've got to be able to go in and cut full width. Shoulder plane cuts full width. And I could go in like that, and I could, if it was out of square in this direction, I need to take material off of here, I would simply start out here, and I would work one pass, and with each pass, I'd come back, check it. Eventually, when I'm square, I'm good to go. My actual tool of preference would be my Lee Nielsen 10 1/4. This is called a carriage maker's plane or a bench rabbit plane. Blade is full width, and it's easy to go in there. You got a lot of surface area on the side, and you go in and do the exact same thing with the blade flush to the side you're working. We're actually going to use this today in the process of prepping the shooting board we're going to make. Any more questions about the function of the shooting board? I'll just say a few things while you're giving people a chance to ask. Go ahead, Ken. Don't interrupt me as soon as you come.
Somebody wants to know, how do you shoot 45-degree case miters?
Okay. We're going to get the basics covered first. And if we have time, we'll come back and we'll address miters. So we're going to focus strictly on the 90-degree one for right now. If I go down too many rabbit holes, you'll lose me.
You got to focus on the shooting board plane.
Yes, right. Answer the question. First of all, just a couple of quick functions. There's a cleat right here on the underside. That cleat catches the front to prevent the board from going that way. I have my fence pulled back from the end of the board because it prevents you, especially when you're first using this. I've just told them they have to keep it going, pressed this way, and they'd end up swinging around like this if the fence was back there. By keeping the fence here 3 or 4 inches back from the end, you still have contact with the plane as you exit the board, and it just makes things much nicer. Now, what plane to use? I actually sold mine. I didn't use them. Stanley made what was called a number 9, which was kind of a boxy, strange-looking thing. Relatively short plane, square, same surface area on the sides. It was a long box, and it was designed for use on a shooting board. What I disliked about it was that it was too light. It didn't have the same amount of mass that this does. One of the advantages of a big plane on a shooting board is actually twofold. Number one, when you're shooting, you only have the inertia of the plane itself to help you get through. You can't start back here. You must be engaged. You would risk hitting the side of the board. There's no way you're going to line that up perfect. So the more distance you have from the toe to the blade, the more run you get at it before you engage the blade to cut through that end grain. So length here and weight are a real plus when it comes to choosing a plane to use on a shooting board, and that I found that number 9 was lacking in that way. So that's why I canceled out the number 9. Now there's a new shooting board that they make that is much bigger, much heavier. Shooting plane, thank you, sorry. And it's kind of an odd-looking thing, and it probably works fine. However, it's a single-purpose plane. If you've ever seen me working, this bench is usually cluttered. I've got all kinds of stuff on it. The last thing I need is a designated plane that has one function. I prefer to use a 5.5. My favorite plane for the shooting board is the 5.5 for 2 reasons. It works extremely well for all the reasons I just stated in choosing a plane to work on the shooting board, and It's not so big or cumbersome that I can't use it as my general purpose plane on the bench. So I can go from one task on the shooting board to another task of finish planing whatever it is I'm working on, and I'm good to go in both accounts. A big number 8 would actually be the best functioning plane on a shooting board, simply because you've got more length ahead of the blade and you've got over a 10-pound plane. You get that thing moving, it's just going to keep on going. However, this is a big plane to be wielding around your bench. I don't need that much exercise. That's why I've got a gym at the back of the shop. That would be overkill. Okay, so my favorite plane is a 5.5. That's one that we're going to raffle off tonight, and it'll give you a chance. Has anybody made a donation yet toward that? Yeah?
Megan will say in a few minutes.
Okay. All right, so that's the plane of choice. Yell out your questions. I'm just going to keep on going. Let's go back and talk a little more about this. Here's the single biggest problem that we have been able to overcome. One of them was what I mentioned, was having your fence moved in from the end so that you don't end up swinging around as you're trying to finish the end of the board. The other one was far more subtle. It took a long time before I finally figured it out. If you have you're using a plane like this, watch what happens. If you tip the plane up at all, in other words, from one end, what's immediately going to happen, I need another square to emphasize this. I'm just scraping off some of this crud. All right, so my plane should be sitting square. If, for any reason, that plane tips out, because of the shape of the plane, look what happens. I'm no longer square. Well, every once in a while I'd be using a shooting board and the thing would not be square, and I was fighting with it and I could not figure out what is going on with this shooting board. Shooting board consists of primarily 2 pieces of wood. In this case, it's a piece of 1-inch MDF and a piece of 7/16 birch plywood. And it's glued together to make it nice and stable. However, a glue line always introduces stress. Now, why not just screw it on? Well, because I want it good and solid, and this is the way I make it. The glue line introduces stress, and at some point, these things were cupping like this. Front to back, they were cupping. Well, if you were to put a cup in there, because the plane's wide here, narrow there, what's going to happen? It's going to tip out as it rests here and here, and all of a sudden you no longer have your square setup. So when we make them now, we actually introduce a curve so that the top side is convex and not concave. It can be convex, and because of the wide spot, it will always remain square, even if it isn't touching here and here. But if you were to hollow it out, now it tips over because it's wider in the middle than it is on either end. So we will show you that. We're going to make the base out of a piece of 3/4 inch MDF. Why MDF? Well, it's got a hard-wearing top surface. It's about as stable a product as you're going to find, certainly more stable than solid wood, more durable than particle board, and plywood is just not stable. Rarely will you ever cut a piece of 3/4 inch plywood 12 by 24 and have it sit flat on your bench. It just doesn't happen. So that's why MDF on the base, and it's heavy. Why plywood on the top? Well, it's a little better wearing. The disadvantage to MDF is that the core is relatively soft. And I used to use a piece of MDF up here, but that core was just too soft. The plywood is going to be harder. You've got part of it is long grain, part of it is end grain. And I actually go in here and I saturate that with cyanacrylate. I'll show you how we do it. And that'll stiffen that up even more.
Question.
Yes.
Doc asks, why?
Doc from?
Doc K. I'm not sure. Why would you join 2 pieces of wood instead of just making a miter cut?
Why would I join 2 pieces of wood?
You might mean like a rabbit.
I'm not catching the...
Instead of gluing MDF and the plywood, why wouldn't you just cut a rabbit?
He said a miter
So,
cut.
so someone else asked a similar question. Instead of gluing a second board piece, why not use one solid board with a
Oh,
big rabbit?
and cutting a rabbit here.
Yeah.
Well, the minute you break into the surface of the MDF, you get into a much softer core. So the advantage of the MDF is how hard wearing the outside surfaces are. So that's the reason why I do that. Now, one of the other, that's the main reason. The other reason we have this piece here is because the blade does not go all the way to either end. Unlike the rabbit plane that I just showed you, the rabbit plane, the blade goes all the way. But if you were to use a rabbit plane like this, you'd be cutting your shooting board every time you made a pass. So on mine, you have to get past this. So I have a rabbit cut right here, right along that edge, so that this part that sticks out the furthest, the bottom of the ply, runs below the blade along this part of the plane. So I'm never actually engaging my second piece with the blade. Doesn't have to be a very big rabbit. It looks to be about a little less than 1/16 of an inch.
And Doc is from DC, by the way.
Okay.
And really quick hello from Bob and Tori. They met you last weekend in Clarksville.
Hi, Bob. And Tori.
Tori Morrison. Yeah, Bob and Tori Morrison.
Nice to have you here.
Quick other question. Does
Yeah.
moisture have an effect on the shooting board?
Well, moisture has the effect on anything wood. It's going to have less effect on. Oh no, I can't say that. You put moisture on MDF, and it's going to swell up like a sponge. So yes, and no matter what you put on MDF, we finish ours. We spray. That one hasn't been done. We spray ours with two or three coats of lacquer, more or less just to keep it from getting dirty. Mine was never done. That's why you can see how dirty it is. Time for a new one. But yeah, you get moisture near MDF, it's going to destroy it. So you have to avoid moisture. But with the exception of my sharpening station, I don't have any water. I typically don't have any water near anything. So that is a downside. The other upside is that if you're making your own shooting board, there's not a lot of material in it. So if you have to redo it and make another one, you're not out a lot. Okay? So piece of MDF, piece of Baltic birch. The Baltic birch, now you got to make sure, because every plane's a little bit different, the distance that you need, let me measure that. In order to keep your piece of wood up high enough that it's actually engaging the blade, you need to have, in this case, you need to have almost, well, not a quarter. Yeah, almost a quarter of an inch. Some are a little bit less than that. Some might be a little bit more. That's why we went with the 7/16 ply, to make sure. You don't want to be too thick, or else you're limiting. If you had to come in here and shoot a piece of 2-inch stock, you may actually get to a point where you're not engaging the blade or the board fully because you're up here above the blade. So you want as much capacity as you can. Anything else on that
Another question.
question?
This is from Miles from South Dakota.
Miles?
He watched another YouTuber make a shooting board that is ramped where the plane sits in order to use a different
good question.
use different areas of the plane blade. Is this unnecessary or a good idea?
Terribly unnecessary. I say that having done it. Here's why. Let's say you're planing 3/4 inch stock, which is what most of you are going to be working with. So here's a piece of, actually a little more than 3/4 inch stock. Here's my piece of 3/4 inch stock. So the question is, if I ramp this, so if in effect the board's going to be sitting up like this, wouldn't it be better, because instead of just using 3/4 of an inch of blade, I would be maybe using 1 inch of blade. So you can't have too much of a ramp. So let's say you're going to have, and remember now this is 4.5 inches wide. So if you're going to ramp it, by the time you get out here, if you're up more than 1/8, well, let's actually show it. So how much could we ramp to where we get ridiculous back here? Let's say we went up 1 inch. So on something like that, we would be using at the most an extra 1/4 inch of the blade. Well, let me tell you something. The effort that it takes to make that ramp far exceeds how long it takes to resharpen a blade. Come to my class, watch my videos. We sharpen a blade, takes 32 seconds to be precise. So I would rather spend 32 seconds resharpening the blade, but in all honesty, the blades will hold an edge long enough that it's not a, I don't know whether that was actually ever done, or it was one of those things where somebody had an idea or a theory, but it wasn't used a lot. I've heard about it other than trying it myself and realizing that no, this is not worth the time spent. And it has nothing to do with moving your plane. It's positioning of your board. So it's not like you're having your plane run downhill, which might make it easier. That's not how it works. So my answer to that, my opinion is no, don't bother doing it. Just make a regular shooting board, get a second blade, learn how to sharpen in 32 seconds, and you'll be good to go. Okay? Fire the questions as you get them.
Continue.
So we're going to come over here, and I'm going to use a piece of 3/4 inch MDF. Now, I'm going to make my shooting board 24 inches, and I should probably address that real quick. If you want your shooting board to be have as much capacity as possible, but you don't want it falling off the end of your bench. So in this case, I probably could have made mine a little bit longer. Not that I need to catch that outside tool tray, but I probably could have, well, if this is 24, I've got a cleat here, I probably could have gone 25, no big deal. But I have usable capacity. If you get back, if your board is too wide and you're trying to start, and I've done this before, you're trying to start with your plane sitting out there, that's terribly uncomfortable and awkward. So I would say about there is the maximum capacity for this.
You can probably go back a little
shooting
further.
board. I could come back here. I could probably even pick up a 16-inch wide piece if I needed to.
Probably not end grain though.
Yeah, if it was a piece of heavy maple, that would be a lot of work. So 24 inches. We actually offer two different sizes. We do an 18-inch and a 24-inch. 24 is the most popular of the bunch. And how wide? Well, the other thing you want to remember is how many times a day, Jake, when we're working, do I do this? Come over here,
8.
put this back in here so that I can have less stuff on my bench. I'm dragging that thing in and out of there multiple times. So I don't want something that weighs 50 pounds or is hard to handle. So this is 12 inches wide. Now, normally for most components, it's fine. However, if you got something really long, you're going to want to have it supported on the other end. So what I did is I actually, when
Far
I
end.
first, where?
Far end.
When I first, no, it's in there. When I first made that shooting board, it was wider than I wanted. So I cut it down. And now I have this piece. So if I'm dealing with a long board, so that I'm not trying to balance it out here, I can put this piece on there and that'll hold it in place and it works just great. So that may be something.
You probably don't need that cleat
No.
out there.
No, you don't need the cleat. In fact, all you need is just something the same height. As I said, when I originally made that shooting board, I made it too wide. It was uncomfortably so wide, so I cut it. But I saved that piece for that purpose. Little addition. Okay, so that's why the size. So I'm going to get a piece of this MDF and I'm going to cut it. I'll do it over, actually I'll do it right here on the sled. We're under a slight restriction tonight. We're waiting on a new cartridge for the saw stop. All I have is a demo cartridge, and a demo cartridge lasts for 60 seconds, and then it shuts off. So everything we do can't be more than 60 seconds. Actually, I'm going to take this over to the chop saw. Let's turn the air on because that stuff is such a mess. Anytime I work with MDF, I always like to get rid of the factory edge. There you've got a factory edge. It may have been sitting on a floor somewhere, on a concrete floor. It sucked in a little bit of moisture. So I like to be able to cut some of that away. I'm not going to have that luxury tonight, well, 1/8 of an inch. But that's the factory end. So I'm going to go about 24.5. Why is that not sitting flat?
It's on the clamp out there.
No. Okay. Is this open? Now, I just wanted to break it down with that saw. I'll get more precise over here. I want this to be nice and square. It's MDF. I would prefer to not to run that over my jointer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my fence for just a 32nd over 12 inches. I'm going to take a pass to get rid of that. Then I'm going to flip it around and take a 32nd off of this so that I know I've got...
Have you double checked the tape?
Now, we've been doing some modifications on this saw. That looks to be right on. Gotta be quick. Now we'll set it at 12. Try to make one continuous pass, meaning don't stop. You do that, and often what happens, the saw will leave a little ridge or an extra heavy ridge, possibly even a burn if you don't have enough clearance between your fence and your blade. Otherwise, if your fence is pushed in a little bit, which it shouldn't be. Now we need to cut that to length. So what I'll do is use my sled. We're going to cut this at 24. We've also got to process our piece of plywood. I'll do this one first. Just love that dust.
Should you mention that's our future project right there?
What?
The sled.
Oh, yeah, time for a new sled. Well, yeah, that's right, too. We're going to make a sled for one of our next live broadcasts. I think that's the factory edge, so I'm just going to take a light trim pass. Now I'm trapping it between the blade and the fence. As long as you keep it tight and support it, you're okay. All right, there's my piece of MDF. Now I'm going to use a piece of Baltic birch, and I don't have a full sheet left, so I'm using up some screw-ups from a previous project. And Jake managed to get us some new throat inserts that provide zero clearance. So that's a rip blade, and I can cross-cut with it and still get a nice clean cut. I need to get rid of some of that. Oh, by the way, I'm going to, the way we make ours is we have a 2-inch wide, what do we call that, Ken? Where the plane sits.
Track.
This is wider. I don't need any more than 2 inches. I've only got 1 7/8 inches there, but just for the ease of math, we're going to go 2 inches. So this piece of plywood is going to be 24 by 10, and I've got to get rid of about 1/4 of an inch on there. So I'll rip this piece down 10 1/2. I'm ignoring grain direction because of the material I have. Cut this down to 10. Could have done that in a better order, because I've got to now put my sled back on, then take my sled off, and go in there and cut the rabbit. That was me burning up my 1-minute cartridge. So we'll cut off.
Shut the power off. Too.
Huh? You have to shut the power off and then turn it back on?
Yeah.
Remind me to not to let that run for that long next time. Is that at 24? Yep.
We got a question.
Fire away.
A couple of people have asked about using commercial
Just
shooting.
Loud, Ken?
No, Ken, your mic's not working.
What's that?
Are you talking about? Are you gonna ask the phenolic one?
What's is the mic? Is it working?
It's not coming in very loud. I'll get it worked out.
People ask about using commercial shooting boards made of phenolic,
Phenolic?
phenolic,
Yeah.
and they want to know if you recommend them or don't recommend them.
I like mine. So the answer is no. and I don't. I don't know. How do I answer that question? We don't want to chase business away, but I'm here showing you how we make them. If you want to buy one, we sell them. If you want to make your own, I'm showing you the easiest way to do it. I'm just getting rid of some of the burrs on the bottom side. So much for my zero clearance. You can buy all the fancy stuff you want. I use plywood and MDF. And it
I
works
should
just
mention
great.
the zero clearance only works when the wood is actually touching the insert.
No. It's oh.
Look at the cup.
True. That need to be held down. All right. So now what I'm going to do is cut that rabbet. I'm just looking. This is going to be my downside. This is going to be the top side. So I'm going to cut the rabbet along here. And I like to, just for neatness sake, I would like to have that rabbet come down to and stop on a piece of long grain. So if you were to look at that real closely, if I had one of my 500 pencils here, so this is end grain, long grain, end grain. So I want to get my my rabbet to cut right down to that red line. It's going to look a little neater, that's all. So if we set this, oh, by the way, if you have a saw stop, I learned this the other day, and you want to know whether or not the material you're going to cut is safe, just have it touch the blade. How come that's not working? There. So obviously my skin would set it off, a piece of metal, but composites sometimes will do it too, so touch it like that first to determine whether or not it's safe to cut. I wish I'd known that before I cut a hockey stick because it cost me an $80 cartridge. I think that's just about right. Now I'm going to cut this on the outside. Not something I normally do, but I don't want to have to put my fence on there. I'm going to go, not quite the width of a blade. And I'll just make an initial cut and then pull it out and check it. And that's where we want to be. We're just touching the top of that long grain piece.
Make sure you hold it down tight too.
Just going to look a little neater. Okay. What's that going on right there? We didn't quite get all the way through. I'll raise it up just a smidge. I'll scrape that. All right, let's come over here. Now, this is going to make your shooting board last a little bit longer. So I'm going to put that in the vise. I'm just going to get rid of that little bit of. Is that Super Dave making a? Using my shoulder plane just to go in there and cut off that little bit of. Actually, I think it was glue. There. Now I'm going to take a sanding block and I'll just get rid of that burr. Now I'm going to use thin cyanacrylate and try not to make a mess. And I'm going to go in here and I want to saturate. All I'm really worried about is just saturating this surface right here. That's where the plane is going to wear on as you use it. I want to wipe off all that dust because I don't want that being stuck on there. The end grain fibers will really soak that up. This stuff comes in 3 different consistencies. Thin, syrupy, thin, maple syrupy, and the really
Honey?
thick one would be honey. Yeah, it's not quite honey, but close. Fumes that are terrible. Okay. That's all we need.
Oh.
What? Sticking to my bench?
Maybe. Yep.
I didn't think I was running that bad. Okay. If you want to, although you don't really need it, they make an accelerator. And I'm doing that just so when I can pick it up and handle it, I don't end up having my hand get stuck to it. That sets it up immediately. Okay.
Question.
Yeah.
Instead of cutting the rabbet in the plywood, could you use the plane on the straight edge to cut away where the blade touches it to make sort of a zero clearance board?
Yeah, the only problem is that every time that would probably work fine. I prefer to do it this way so it's ready to use right from the get-go. Your blade's going to be in a different position each time and blah, blah, blah. This just works, and it's easy. How much time does that take? Okay, where's my piece of MDF? First thing I want to find out is there a curve at all in the piece of MDF? Because I want that to work in my favor. So I've got to get this nice and clean. Wipe all the dust off of it. Now, I've got one that I've already got to this next stage, so once we've glued this up, we'll be able to pick that up. We don't have to wait for it. Okay, so I'm going to set that down on a flat surface. Now, you see how that pivots in the middle? That means that board has got a little bit of a natural cup like that. When I make the shooting board, I want to have the opposite. So if I flip it over like this, it doesn't do that.
You can see it.
Hmm?
You can see how cupped it is.
Well, that's even better. So this is going to be the top side. This is going to be the side that I glue on. Can I get a pencil?
Ken's grabbing it.
Thank you, Ken. So this will be my glued up side. Check that, because if you don't do that, you're going to be fighting what's naturally occurring on your piece of MDF. This is going to go together like this. That's okay. Okay, Ken. Actually, I'm going to do it right there. The only thing, I didn't grab the clamps for me, would you please? They're sitting right there on that other bench. Okay. I'll apply the glue to this one. Now, when I put the pressure on, if you don't have a ton of clamps, I made this little jig. And all it is a piece of MDF with 2 strips on it, 2 strips of wood. And I've got 3 blocks of wood, so I have 1 clamp is going to apply pressure in 2 places. 1 clamp here, 1 clamp here, 1 clamp there, instead of having to have a dozen clamps on there. And that'll apply all the pressure that I need. This is going to act as a caul to help spread it out. But when I put this in place, I want it to stay put. So I'm going to use my little Grex gun. You can use a little small nail, but you don't want to use something too big, because then it's going to counteract the ability of those 2 pieces to conform to each other. Ken, would you grab me the masking tape, please? I forgot that. So I'm going to set this aside for a second. Make sure this surface, and I'm going to glue it up on this table saw instead of that one, because that way I can continue to use that one. It's a relatively flat surface. It's certainly flat enough for what we're doing. My glue spreader is a card scraper that I just went over, and I took a triangular file to it, and I filed a bunch of notches in there so that I could just a lot easier to spread the glue and leave some glue on there. Now I need to create a curve. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come in here and divide this up. There it is. Me and pencils don't like each other. So obviously 12 inches is the middle. How many did we use on that other one, Ken? I don't want to actually use it, but do we have 3 or 4? How many strips? 5? And then 1, 2.
So
Yeah,
8
right,
and-
okay.
8
So
and
then we're going to
4?
divide this up.
12,
8 and 4, yeah. 4, 8. That means 16 and 20. So 4, 8, 16, and 20. How are our Purple Heart donations coming in, Megan? Have we taken care of a soldier yet?
Nope.
How's
Almost.
our attendance tonight?
We have the best attendance we've ever had.
How many?
We currently have 529.
That's awesome.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a piece of masking tape, try to get it in the middle, right there. And you could go in and do some strips of wood, and I could have done that, but I was being lazy the first time I did it, and that's all I did. So that's 2, 3. This is painter's tape, by the way. It comes off easier. 4, 5. Any idea how many we used, Ken?
Not that
6. I'm going to go.
that's more than
This is going to be a new one. 7, 8. And then I'm going to go. So I'm going to go 8, 6, 4. I think so.
This could be tedious.
2,
So that's not actually the base.
3.
That's the new base you're making. That's
No, this is going to be. This is the actual. Now you made me lose count. How many
3.
was that?
3.
Huh?
3.
No, it's more than 3.
I just don't know
I
what
just
you're doing.
counted them.
1, 2, 3, 4. This is 3, Jake.
Mm-hmm.
4, 5, 6. I got to do this one. Any questions while I'm doing this tedious work? 3, 4,
Who invented the shooting board?
5,
Didn't you see? Super Dave's brother.
6. Super Dave did? Yes.
Yeah.
Way back in
1520
Back-
BC.
Back before he was born? Who asked who invented the shooting board?
Garrett Dillon.
I don't know. I'll go with Super Dave, though. All right, so now when we flip this over and we clamp it down, it's going to have a natural curve to it. We'll take
Just
these
a
off
second.
when we're done. What?
Push on the center.
What?
Well, I'm just wondering if there was more cup in
Well, it
it.
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, just as long as we have some cup. All right, so this is going to sit on there like that. Make sure that your rabbit is on the side of your what do we call that?
Track.
Track for your plane. I think I'd know this. Okay, so now the glue up. Now this makes it a heck of a lot easier. I got my nails. I got everything ready.
Did you notice that that plywood's also cupped in the same direction?
No, this is all by design.
Yep.
Come on, glue. And this is just like spreading glue on flooring. Make sure you get a good even coat everywhere, except I'm going to stay away from, shoot, it's this edge. I'm going to do it like that so I actually know what I'm doing. I'm going to stay away from that edge just because I don't want to have to wipe glue out of that track. Fine if you do it fast and go right off the edge like that. It doesn't drip if you're catching any of it. got a real bow in it. This will be an awesome one. Now I'm getting to within about 1/4 of an inch of this top side. It's got too much curve to work that way with the. Now we only use this glue for doing this, so that's why I can put it back in here without worrying about contaminating it. Plus it's almost empty.
You're dripping over here. You're dripping a lot over here.
Okay. Don't get it on the area that I don't want it on. So I'll go here and then move it forward. Ken, never mind, I got one right here. Now I'm going to use this little pin nailer. Keep this corner flush. That's just enough to hold it in place without being really noticeable. Go down to this side and do the same thing. One in the middle. Push it down, let the glue spread, and then pull the trigger. Done with that. Get that glue off my bench, off my saw. Okay, now we'll move this over. Put it on here. Take this. You could, I was going to say you could use more cauls, but you don't really need to. So one's out on the edge, one's in the middle, and one's on the opposite edge. So the only expensive part of this is getting a clamp that can reach all the way. I'm going to do the middle one first, just because that will do a better job of pushing the pressure down in the middle and then spreading it out. We've been doing these enough to know that, to be able to tell you with certainty that 3 clamps are all you're going to need. As evidenced by the squeeze out. And when we take this out of the clamps, it will maintain that curve that we want. All right. 30 minutes, leave for an hour if you can afford the time. Now, I've got one right here that we glued up earlier. I managed to get glue on the inside, so I'm going to fix that right now because that's part of our new way of doing it. Okay, so something I haven't been doing that I'm going to add to it is I'm going to cut a little dust groove right here.
Debris curve.
What are you going to call it?
A debris groove.
Debris, not deep. Well, it is dust. Right there. So I'm going to use this side of the fence. And I don't care if I cut into the into this a little bit, but I don't want to. I want to be essentially right beside it. Now I can't see from that side. Let's get this out of the way. Okay. Now, how deep do we need it? Gotta come up there.
There's a few guys in the chat talking about your salt trick. Do you want to quickly explain it?
Well, no, yes, but I will. Just give me a minute. I'm not a big fan of it anymore because it caused a problem that we'd never had before. All right, I'm going to turn this on and see if we're where we want to be. I don't want to go into that MDF too deep. All I'm looking to do is just provide a little bit of a relief. If I could see a little bit better, I wouldn't have to gotta shut this off before it shuts itself off. Yeah. It's a little bit deeper than that. That's good.
Does it need to move over?
I don't think so. Okay, so we got a little track that runs the whole length, and that'll just keep, I mean, dust will eventually accumulate in there, but as it is, we've been doing it right now, is as soon as you get dust in there, you've got to scrape it away. This will buy you a little bit of time. So let's take this over. Next thing I want to do is verify that that edge is straight. I'll show you how we're going to do that. Actually, we should probably put the cleat on first, but I'll just show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my longest plane, which is number 8. I'm going to pull the blade all the way in just to make sure it's not bumping into anything. And I need to make sure that that edge is nice and straight. So I'll set it right on here like that. See the fact that that rocks? So there's a high spot in there. So I've got to go in there and remove that. I'm going to use my bench rabbiting plane to do it. But before I do, to make it a little bit easier, I'm going to put my cleat on so that it'll hold itself in place. But I've got to do that before I put this piece on, because this piece is where everything references off of. So let's get a cleat made. We need a cleat that's going to be 12 inch. I'm going to use, where's that piece of Osage orange? Yeah, I'm going to make it nice and yellow. I'm going to use a piece of, what did you say this came, where this came from?
Argentina Osage.
Argentina Osage orange. And why I'm using it is because it's very hard. So it'll withstand a lot of abuse before I have to come in there at some point and straighten it out again. In fact, I would expect that by the time that has to happen, the shooting board will be ready to be replaced. It's heavy and extremely dense.
And
Now I'm just looking, and I've got some end checks right here, so see if we can't get rid of them. Still. Okay. 10 inches is a little too short for the thickness planer, so I'm going to go 12.
wait,
What?
would it be better to do 20 inches?
No. I got to do 12 anyway. I forgot because the cleat is 12.
Wait, what's the 10 inches for?
You'll see.
The fence. Yeah, Dad, you use 12 on the bottom.
Yeah. 10 on the top. I'm using this for both.
Oh.
Send that through the thickness planer. Okay. Top cleat. Top cleat, it's nice to have it taller than 3/4. As far as width goes, we could get away with about 1 3/4 on that one. Now the bottom cleat doesn't need to be any more than 1/2 inch. This needs to be cut down to 10, but we can go ahead and put this one on now.
Kevin wants to see the frickin' good barbecue.
Huh?
Kevin Burris wants to see the frickin'
does
good
he?
barbecue. This is an experiment for possibly an upcoming class. This is lemon peppercorn, wild Pacific salmon, and maple bourbon chicken wings, all done on the smoker. So if you attend the class, you might get to try some.
Bringing back memories, Kevin? All right, I'm just going to clean off the mill marks. Top and bottom, why not? We haven't got a shooting board, so we'll have to do the edge. Just pretending. This one will actually get sanded off on the edge sander, but in case I accidentally put it on the inside, it's already done. Now, yeah, this is gonna be made for a right-hander. So if whoever wins the draw ends up being a left-handed person, I'll make you a left-handed one. How would I do it differently? Well, a right-handed one is going to be operating this way with my right hand. We can turn this into a left-handed one by switching it around and putting the cleat so it's like this, so I'm using it with my left hand. So we'll put this in place.
So that means a right-handed person would be getting this finished one. The left-handed person could be having the other one that's being glued up.
True, because we don't have to do anything specific left-hand or right-hand just yet. Now I'm gonna I screw and glue these. Glue acts like a weld. In addition to the mechanical fastener being the glue, gluing the screw. I don't want a lot of squeeze out, so I'm gonna hold that glue back from the inside edge, meaning this one in here. Outside edge is gonna get all flushed off, so it doesn't matter. And this is longer than I need it, but that's all right. I'll trim it off over in the table saw. Okay. And no glue it alone isn't enough. And the reason I say that is because I've hit one hard enough that it separated. It took the top layer of MDF off with it. So I like to get down actually right into the plywood. It slid. Okay. How are we doing Purple Heart donation wise? Do I need to stop and do a commercial? Yeah? All right, folks, let me tell you something. When we started doing these, I remember thinking, it said to Jake one day, we're giving these guys all this free information that we charge for if I go to a seminar somewhere. I said, let's use it as a way of raising money for a Purple Heart Project. These guys deserve it. I'm not lecturing, I'm just telling you. These guys deserve it. What they've had to do in our behalf, they have to live with the rest of their life. We can't cure everybody, and we can't take everybody. I sometimes think we're emptying a lake with a spoon, but of the guys that do come, ask Kevin Burris, who we were just talking about a minute ago. Read what Kevin said when he wrote a letter about his experience here. Go to my website, go under, is it still under the October? Why it's under there, but go under the class description for October 2020 and read Kevin's comments, and you'll get a better appreciation for what this can do. Wood is good, that's all I can say. By the way, don't forget we have t-shirts too to help promote our cause. These guys deserve it. We bring them in here. We teach them as much as we can in 6 days. We send them home with enough tools. When I say we, I mean everybody involved that donates or anybody that here is helping us. We send them home with enough tools that they can set up a small shop, and it becomes their medicine. I'm not a doctor, and I know nothing about this. I only witness what I see, and I go from there. But when these guys that suffer come back and tell me, then I realize this does work, and we will keep doing it. We're increasing it this year, and who knows, maybe we'll be able to increase it more in the future. But if you want to be part of it, this is your opportunity. And I also would implore anybody that even remotely thinks they might be interested in coming to the class, please come. We always need those 6 civilians to be in the class with the 6 vets that create such a healing environment. More about that later. All right, got to put some screws into this. That's 1 3/4 inches, so I can go 1.5 inches. I'm going to use number 8s. Ken, is that what you use, 8s or 6s?
Ken, I'm the gun.
3 will do it, but I can't use go 1, 2, and then this doesn't have, this is over the track, and I can only use a 1-inch one there. Make sure that that's not gonna. Could I not use 1 1/4 inches? No, can't. Okay, so Ken's got that all set up for me. I put that in the wrong spot. Let me move this over. Actually turn it down like that so I can get the drill in there. Right about in the middle. And that is deep enough. This stuff is really hard, and I'm going to go in and counterbore because I'm afraid it'll snap the screw. I want to make sure that that countersink is deep enough that the screw head doesn't end up sitting above, and then it'll scratch your bench. Is that what that was for, Kim, to counterbore? I think I need a little bit bigger.
No, you don't.
Are you sure?
No, use it. It works great.
But I'm out near the edge of this thin piece. That's the only reason why I'm worried about it. I need. Oh, here I got drills right here. So what I'm doing is just drilling through the Osage orange, but not putting a big hole down into the MDF. Now, I always like to have these neat, so my well of pencils. 12, 6 right there, and this one we brought in 1 inch. So where's my make sure that head goes below. I really want to go a little bit deeper with that. I can go right to the end of the nice having all these drills. We can take these clamps off as soon as we put this last screw in. How are we for time?
Hour and 17 minutes.
What?
An hour and 17 minutes in.
Really?
Yeah.
I talk too much.
I've never heard that.
Huh? Megan disagrees. That a girl. Is Super on?
Oh yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Everybody's here.
What do you mean it's super on? He's
Well,
the one
and
that
I don't
said-
hear anybody yelling out any vets other than Kevin.
He's the one that claims heritage for shooting board.
In fact, Danny's cat Felix just gave a special shout out to Dave.
What?
Danny's cat Felix just gave a special shout out to Dave. Said he can't go back to the litter
Sorry,
box.
I shouldn't laugh like that without telling you the story.
Felix,
but
did Felix say something about how Dave is his?
Said he can't go back to the litter box now. It's just not the same.
Chris, was it Chris? John Waite said instead of using screws, try three 8-inch dowels. No risk of scratching and plenty of strength.
well, yeah, just a little more extra work than what I want to go through. These become, at least in my case, they become consumable. They don't last forever. So I put as much work into them as I feel justified. Now what I'm doing right now is I'm going to verify that that edge is straight. So when I put my plane in there, the fact that I can move it like that means I've got a high spot in the middle. So I'm going to take my, just before I do this, let me verify one more time that that blade is fully retracted so it was not hitting on that, or pivoting on it. So I'm going to take my bench rabbet. I've got the blade sitting flush with the side, and I'm going to go in here. I'm going to remove some material. I started planing here. I stopped planing there. I backed up a little farther, and I'll go forward a little bit farther. Then I'll come back here a little bit more, and I'll go forward a little farther, a little more. I'm stopping shy. Now I'm going to take a pass full length. Don't want to chew off all of my rabbet. Okay, doesn't move, nice and stable. If that had a bump in the middle, oh, it would drive you nuts because you would never get positive contact. Same thing with the face of the fence. It has to be either slightly hollowed, concave, or straight. If it's got a bit of a bump in it, every time you plane, the board's going to move on you. It really will drive you crazy. That's the nice thing about that cyanacrylate. See how it holds all that wood together?
Question, do you ever use wax to lubricate your screws?
Soap was what I was raised using.
Soap.
Okay, so our next move, how are we going to do this, Ken? We usually use the bench. How have you been doing it in order to clamp everything together? Using the bench out there?
Yeah.
Can we grab that and pull it in right here?
Yeah.
This just happens to be the way we do it. It makes it a lot easier. And rather than change our methods, actually, if you go right across the side, right, it'll be easier. This is the bottom half of one of our benches, but it just works extremely well for what we're about to do.
Are you doing a seminar at the Toronto show?
Huh?
Are you doing a seminar at the Toronto show?
Yeah,
Yes.
we're doing seminars all day,
Got a few people that'll be there. From
all day, every day.
Seminars are actually held in our booth this year.
Yeah,
Oh.
they're giving us 3 booths and also chairs. Now I got to get these leveled up. I don't know why these aren't. Okay, can you grab me a 9/16? Is it 9/16 or 5/8, Jake?
9/16.
9/16 open and wrench, please, Ken. Why did these come loose? All right.
Other bag, Ken. Those are the millimeter.
Okay. Put this in place. I'm going to use my big 12-inch square. Actually, we have to get that piece of stock prepared. You got it? Cute. Yeah, I actually need 2 of them, Ken. I'll let you take care of that while I do this. All right, so my piece of Osage orange for my fence.
There's only going to be one in there, Ken.
You can dance, Jake. Now I'm using the side of this, and I want this to be flat. See how there's a bit of a bump there? So I flip it over like that, and it doesn't do that. So this is going to be the downside. I'll put an X on there. I'm going to go run that over the jointer right now, both edges, and clean it up. only want a very, very light pass. That's too light. Just getting rid of saw marks. Still has some saw marks on there. Okay, check this. Okay, flip this one over. We can use either one. So as long as it's pivoting like that, I've got a little bit of a hollow in there, and that's okay. Perfectly flat would be even better, but that's so close. In fact, close enough that I doubt. Jake, where's that 1000 shim that we've been using? Do you remember seeing it?
Yeah.
There it is right there. Okay, this is a 1000 shim. And let's just see if it's out that much. It isn't. If I can pull it, that means it's not out that much. So that's as close as we're going to get.
Mark that one.
So I'm going to mark it and put an arrow on there like so. This is the side that's going to be facing me. This is the side that's going to go down. Now, we need to... oh, you're tying that up.
Oh my gosh.
What's the matter?
How am I supposed to time that?
You what?
Someone just donated $1,000.
Somebody what?
Donated $1,000.
Well, thank you. Who did it? Can I say?
Derek Valselka.
Pa?
Derek Valselka.
Derek? Thank you very much, Derek. Appreciate that. They appreciate it. In fact, you wouldn't believe how appreciative these guys are. There's what that Osage orange looks like, end grain shavings.
Argentine.
Argentine. Now you're going to want to go out and get a shooting board.
Wait, did that plane clean?
Yeah. Okay, now. Okay, so when I put this on, I want to be flush with this side, but I want to be held back a little bit over here. Now, show that, Jake. If you do it just like that, sooner or later you're going to hit that with your plane. You're going to tear it off on the backside. So I always pull it away a little bit, not too much, about right there. I'm going to mark this on the bottom side and go cut it off. I left that a little bit long too. It's a little easier, more and a little safer on the jointer. Cut a chamfer on the far side. Go in and clean that up.
Eric says that he's going to meet Dale Nish's son this week.
Oh, Eric from where? Utah?
Yeah.
Abby.
Oh, Eric Ebby. Oh, yeah. Yeah, good. Good. If it's Daryl or Brian, either one, tell them both I said hello. So Eric came to our workshop, second one in the fall? First one in the fall. First one, I think.
Yes, he did. First one.
All right, so what we need to do is get this in position. Oh, sorry, just forgot something. Well, anyway, that's all. That's ready to put on. What we need to do next, before we do that, is I just like to clean this up, and it's a heck of a lot easier to do it now than it is once we put it together. So I can take these clamps off. Set that there. And I'm just going to give this a quick sanding. Yes, you heard me say sanding. Everybody's in a state of shock. Mostly just to clean it up. I need one of those that's clean.
We almost have 600 viewers.
Really?
Blows our previous record away.
How are our donations coming? Have we blown away that record?
No,
No?
no. We have one vet paid for, though.
Yes, good. We have 36, 35.
Somebody asked if walnut would be a good wood to use for a fence.
No. No. Too I don't even use hard maple. I find that too soft. Before I glue this on, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to clean this up. So I'm going to cut that at just a little bit under 12. Will just allow me to flush up where the plywood and the, make sure I'm staying away from my staples. I'm going to go slow so I don't get any bad tear out on that bottom side.
Timo Palmer wants to know if you ever made a shooting board plain hot dog handle yet.
Working on it. Alan Peters used the number 7. It's the only plane he used. And he only weighed about 120 pounds, so it puts me to shame. And he had a little hot, I took several pictures of it when I went over there and shot a video with him. And I don't know what I did with them. But anyway, and it would clip right on there, so it gave you a nice handle. Obviously, it had to be made specific to that plane, but that's what I've been looking to do if I could ever find one again. All right, so we are ready to glue this on. And what I'm going to do, I'm using this Starrett 12-inch square in a little bit of an unorthodox way, but doesn't matter, it's mine, I can do what I want, right? Okay, I want to clamp this in place so it doesn't move. Just want that. I want those edges to be parallel. Since I'm going to clamp against them, I'm going to put a clamp on. I need one of those. Couple of these, one of these. So I'm going to clamp right here. That'll hold that firmly. Now I need to have this in position. This is my front edge. So it's going to go on. I'm going to leave about that much of an overhang. I need to get this tight in place. So I'm going to put a clamp right here, making sure that this is tight against that fence. I'm going to put that one.
Dominic asked, what if you don't have a number 8 plane to reference everything from? In other words, to check if you got a...
What are you going to use?
Yeah.
Just a second.
A number 7.
Bring the microphone closer to you there, Ken, and then ask it again.
Okay, Dominic asked, what if you don't have a number 8 plane to reference everything from?
Well, then if you're really starting from scratch, just thinking of what I need while I'm talking, then you may have to go in there, and it's not impossible. We could have done it. I just didn't want to make this a 4-hour. Megan wants to stay longer, but I tell her, I said, Megan, we can't stay here all night. You might have to go in there with your plane and a piece of hardwood, and you might have to make yourself a nice straight edge that you could then put in there, clamp it in place, and do the same thing. What are you going to do without a square? Well, same thing. You could take a piece of plywood, and you could cut a piece of plywood and get it perfectly square. Play with it until it's exactly what you want. This just happens to be the easiest way to do it. Okay, so what we're going to do here, we're going to glue this. I'm going to clamp like this, somewhat lightly. Then I'm going to put a clamp here, and I'm going to put a clamp here. And it'll set this up, and this will keep us within 1/1000th of an inch. So enough glue, but not too much, because I don't want to have to deal with a bunch of squeeze out. And I'm going to stay back a little bit from that front edge. It probably needs a little more.
Christian asks, how long do you expect a shooting board to last?
Well, I can't answer that question because it depends on how gentle you are with your tools and obviously how much you use it. But I would expect that if you're doing this as a weekend woodworking warrior and you're careful with your tools, it will last you a long, long time. Mine, I hate to say this, but mine get used at the workshops. And they don't always get treated like I would treat them. So they get beat up. In fact, if you look, I'll show you what I mean when we go over there, what's happened to that one. So this is going to keep it tight. But before I put too much pressure, which might cause that to pop up, I'm going to come over here, making sure that that pad on the bottom is up tight before I start to screw this down so it doesn't pull it one way or the other. Put a little bit of pressure here. I think I need a longer clamp right there. That's why I have this one. Now I put a little more pressure on this. Jake, hold that right there, please. Okay, that should have me perfect. Time, 22. We'll give it 10 minutes, and we'll put screws in, and then we can take it apart. All right, come over here, and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, you look at it from this end. Do you see where my fence is? My fence is actually sloped. Why is that like that? I didn't do it. But when people are first learning, as I said, they have a tendency. Why do I have an extra piece? They have a tendency when they're trying to get the plane to engage, they have a tendency to lean over like that. And in the process of leaning over like that, they've chewed off the end of my shooting board. So if you do stuff like that, well, it may not last you as long. But under normal circumstances, especially now that we actually put a finish on it, should last a whole lot longer. Okay, our next step with this is going to be, we're going to put 4 screws from the underside up into this. Then we're going to flush off all the surfaces, give it a quick sand. We're going to brand it, cut some chamfers so it's not hard on the hands. Check it, and it should be ready to go. What do we need to get up into there? We could handle 2-inch screws. So I'm going to use 2 by number 8s.
Mm-mm.
1 3/4. I don't have any 2s.
You don't? You're out of 2s?
Yeah, I don't see any. 1 3/4. We don't have any 2s? Yeah, there's some 2s right there.
2s will go right through.
No, that's a heavy piece. That's a little bit thicker than normal. I got that at 2 1/8. So 2 will do it.
Will it?
Yeah.
But that means you have to perfectly
Fine, I'll
counter
go
things
with
ahead.
1 3/4. I don't want to be the guy that's obstinate.
Don't forget about you're going to be
Your countersink, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
use 5.
Ken's talking like he makes these all the time.
Actually, I do need to tip my hat to Ken. I used to make all the shooting boards. I just got some out, Ken. And Ken is forever looking over my shoulder. Oh, yeah, how do you do that? How do you do that? Watching. And now, and I told him before, I said, when we make shooting boards, they have to be precise. We can't send out a shooting board that's off 2 or 3 thousandths of an inch. That's unacceptable. And Ken now makes all the shooting boards, so kudos to Ken. Hear that, Angie? He's paying attention. All right, so that's ready to go. Let's just review this real quick, what we're giving away. The shooting board is going to come out to somebody that we draw. That's one prize for tonight. Second prize will be the Wood River 5.5, brand new plane. When we send it, we'll go through and do our, what do we call it?
Prep
Our
service.
prep service on it, which will make it literally ready to go out of the box and go to work. It'll be sharpened. The back of the blade will be done. That'll be drawn. And have we had anybody bid on the Purple Heart saw?
Yeah, we didn't even barely mention it. No one's
And we need to have it back here too, so that we can actually show it off. All right, let me handle some questions while we're waiting for the glue to dry in this. Oh, we can talk about miters too. So, any other questions that have come up right now?
Well, there's been a discussion about your hockey tape. Is there any reason you prefer hockey tape instead of wrapping in paracord?
Primer cord?
Paracord?
Primer cord blows up. Paracord, I don't know what paracord is, but hockey tape, we have lots of it. Take a quick peek. Jake? You see all that stuff in the middle of the floor? That's gear that belongs to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many of us in this family play hockey. So there's lots of stick tape around. Why stick tape? Because it works, it's made for grip. So when you put it on a handle like this, or when you put it on a fret saw like this, or particularly when you put it on these are so hard to get any kind of grip on. So let me do one of these real quick that hasn't been done so you'll know how it works. We sell stick tape, 2 rolls for $10, I think. So what we would do, come out here on the handle, take a wrap around, drop the tape down, about that much, and give it a good spin. And when it spins, it's going to turn into a cord. You want it so that it's facing this way. And then you wrap around, and then you come back and you cover. I should use black because this will be grungy in a couple of days.
Somebody wants you to talk about the salt story. You said you were going to talk about it later.
Oh, salt, yeah. It was Luther's idea. I'll blame him. Is he on?
Yep.
Ha!
Full blame.
What?
Full blame.
Full blame. So I don't think Luther invented it. It's actually, in
shaker.
theory, it's a good idea. I think we just put on too much.
It's the shakers.
Huh? Oh, it might have been the shaker we used
The
too. We had a
salt
homemade
Salt
shaker.
shakers, yeah.
So
No, the
when you're gluing
shakers.
2 pieces together like this, when we're doing the bench tops, I mean it's a 60-inch by 62-inch. 62 or 60?
No, it's 60.
No, it's actually not that. It's
No,
62.
it is 60.
It's 62 by 20 inches, and you're putting 3 pieces together, and you've got this big glued surface, and the stuff wants to shift. Shifty. So you salt it lightly. You put your glue on, take a salt shaker, and just lightly shake salt on there. Now when you put your second piece on, those little grains of salt are going to be like little grit and hold everything in place. They'll eventually dissolve and not be in the way. I think we put too much salt on. The only reason I'm saying I didn't like the idea is we did a batch of benches. In case you don't know what I'm talking about, take a quick peek. So these benches are built, the tops are 3 pieces of 1-inch MDF. Makes for a big, solid, heavy top. This was the only time I ever had gaps between the 2 pieces when we used that salt idea. So instead of doing that, we now put clamps on both ends, width and length, and that holds it in place while the glue sets up. So that's the reason for that. Anything else? If not, I'm going to go to, we were just doing this today. We are, in our online workshop, we're building this standing desk. So the top is going to have a wood hinge on it. So this is MDF with plywood, with solid cherry all the way around, and it'll be veneered top and bottom. And the lid is got a wood hinge, okay? So that's going to be right here between these 2 pieces. So when we put the solid wood on, this one's going to go like that. When we put the solid wood on, we have to have a miter right here. Well, the best way to get a miter that is flawless is to use a shooting board. Same concept. And I've got to make a new one of these because this one has really been hammered.
Well, it's flimsy too.
Yeah, next one I make a much bigger piece of MDF. So as long as you get it set up properly so that is a true 45, then once you've gone ahead, I'll do it right now. Actually, this piece come apart or is it glued? I'll cut it. How am I going to cut that on there? That's not a safe thing to do. That's a mortise and tenon. That's never going to break. Well, let me just cut a miter on here then. And don't expect a chop saw to give you a perfect miter. That might be okay for carpentry, but it is, and I'm not saying anything negative about carpentry, but it doesn't work to the same tolerances when you're building furniture. Then you would come in. Now, ideally, I put grip on here so it doesn't, because this is going to want to creep and pull it forward. So you really got to push hard this way. Then you come in with your plane. Now, this is a flat miter. And you clean that up and you get a perfect silky smooth surface. Feel that, Jake. Tell them.
Smooth, very smooth.
Isn't that smooth? And then when you put that miter together, oh, it looks like that wood turned 90 degrees in the tree. Gorgeous. So this is real simple. Like I said, I would put a strip, and the stuff that I like to use is made by Porter Cable, and it's sandpaper that comes in a roll with an adhesive back. And I would just lay a strip of that down on there, and it just keeps it from creeping. Great stuff, and lasts a long time.
Somebody wants to know if you have a video covering the cross-cut sled.
The crosscut?
Crosscut sled.
The
Wait, which one?
The one on the table saw, you mean, Ken?
Sounds like, let's see here.
He just says the crosscut boards covered in a
Boards
video.
covered in a video.
I'm sorry, ask me that question again, please.
Are the cross-cut boards covered in a video?
Are the cross-cut boards covered in a video? Cross-cut boards. Whoever you are, please ask that question again, but frame it a different way, because I'm not following what you mean by cross-cut boards. Try me a different way. Okay, so this is the same thing.
They want to know.
We'll make one of these.
They want to know when the MDF bench build video is coming.
Luther, would you kindly answer that question, please?
I already said that we're waiting on you and Luther to
Well,
make the final cuts.
Now, we had how many hours of footage?
It's over 5.5, I believe.
5.5 hours of footage. We're trying to cut it down to 4 hours. There is some stuff that can be cut out, and it'll be ready. And who did the
Tom Fugate.
Tom
Fugate.
Fugate, who was in our class last summer. Tom is a retired lieutenant colonel, expert in what's it called? SketchUp. So along with the video will be the SketchUp plans. And if you've never used SketchUp, you got to find this out. I'm not a tech guy at all, but I've used it, and it's amazing. You can look at that thing every different way. But yeah, those plans will be ready. Can we say a month? Within a month?
No.
Less than
No.
that.
More.
2 weeks.
More.
My goal was to have it done before we went to Florida.
Well, hopefully it will be. A little bit of pressure on Luther. What's Luther's email so they could?
No.
Okay.
After all, he is in California doing nothing.
He's
Okay,
playing
this
in
is
the,
almost
he's playing in the dirt all
ready.
day.
Let me just take a drink of water real quick. Dry mouth. Yep. Okay. Now I'm going to leave these two clamps in place, but I can take this off without worrying. Normally, I would leave something like this sit in the clamps for 30 minutes. 30 minutes with yellow or white glue is all you need. Although extra doesn't hurt. I'm so neat, I always put things back. Right. We can take this off.
Somebody's watching from the UK and it's almost 3 o'clock in the morning there.
Good reason to stay up. Who is it? Ken?
Ken Hager.
Ken. Ken's a great guy. Always one of the first people to comment whenever I release a new YouTube. Glad you stayed up, Ken. Hope it was worth it.
I think he's basically saying,
Oh, hurry up. No,
let's
he's
get
not.
this done.
Even Megan wants to be here later. All right, put this in place. Now, I'm going to put what did I say, 4 screws on here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's lay them out so that we're nice and neat.
On top, you put 5 on the cleat.
So in from the end an inch. That stops there, so we're in from an end. We're in an inch, and then we've got 9, so we'll go in the middle, 4.5, and then we'll break both of those. 4.5 is 2 1/4. What do you got, a spacer? Oh, all right. Now let's. So We got 1 3/4 screws, which is exactly what this is. Remember, you want them to be sunk below the surface. That has to be the dullest bit in the shop.
That question come up again about why you use multiple boards instead of just one.
Multiple
Like
boards.
the MDF and the plywood on top rather than just Raffle.
Oh, well, because if you're cutting in, that would require you to cut down into the MDF. And the MDF has a very soft inner core. So it would almost defeat the purpose of using MDF. We use MDF because the exterior of it is nice and hard and it wears well. And that alone should be the only answer you need on that question. Now,
Hear the Felix story when you get a moment.
the Felix story? Do you want to tell it? You want me to? All right, so you want all the details on that one? That might get a little embarrassing.
Give the Coles notes.
Skip to the end.
Okay, so Dave, so we went down to Danny's, down to Clarksville, Tennessee. Is Super? I want to tell him if Super's on there.
Wait, how far are you driving
I'm using this because that yellow stuff is so hard. You don't want it to split. So we went down, and Danny was a wonderful host, but he has 3 small children, two daughters and a son. And here 3 of us are descending upon him. So he had 2 places to sleep. I said, well, I'm pulling rank on this one, so I'll get the bed to myself. So I was in one room. Dave and Jake slept together in a king-size bed. What?
Cute.
Oh, I thought you said ew.
Cute.
That should be where you say, I don't want to hear any more. Anyway, something about sleeping on your back. Danny's got 2 or 3 dogs that kind of have their face all punched in. I don't know what kind of dogs they're called, but they go around doing that. And a cat, big male cat. I think it's a big male cat. All cats have attitudes. So somehow the door got open in the morning, and Jake heard this dog jump up. Heard the dog jump up in bed, and Jake heard the. He didn't want to get his face licked, so he pulled the covers over his head. Meanwhile, the dog went over and licked Super Dave's face and woke him up. So he's starting to stir. Now, a rucksack is what all these military guys carry their stuff in. We'd call it a backpack. So Dave's rucksack with all his clothes are sitting in the far corner. So Soup's just starting to wake up. By the way, he snored all night because he didn't bring his CPAP machine, so Jake got to listen to that. And I come in just shortly after this, but he looks over. He says to Jake, as the cat is sitting on his rucksacks, making direct eye contact with him. And Soup says to Jake, he says, I hope he's not peeing on my rucksack. And he no sooner said that, and he heard this. Now, Soup's a pretty big guy. He flew. He flew out of that bed over to the rucksack, which was at the same time I came in and saw something I didn't want to see again. And sure enough, that cat peed all over his clothes, all down into his rucksack. So he's pulling out his clothes, dripping with cat pee. Anyway, so that was the story of. And by the way, Dave loves cats, loves dogs. He's got a bunch of them.
They're Frenchies. Danny said French.
They're what?
Frenchies. They're called.
Frenchies? Super Dave's are? Oh, that dog that you're talking
Danny's.
about. Oh, did Danny just
The
say?
dogs. Yeah. Oh, and Super Dave made a correction. It was not a king-size bed. It was a twin-size bed.
It was a what?
It was a twin-size bed.
That they slept in?
Yeah.
And Jeff wants to know who.
I
was
thought
the
it was
big
a single.
spoon.
What?
Jeff wants to know who was the big spoon.
Jeff who?
O'Connor.
Who?
O'Connor.
Oh,
Jeff-
Jeff O'Connor.
I told Dave, I said, sleep on your back or I will.
That's when you don't want to hear any more. And Soup, Megan is getting jealous. You're crushed?
Clint Bourgeois wants to know if you have any plans in the future to visit New Orleans, maybe come down for the Mardi Gras.
Well, I'm not coming with Dave and Jake, that's for sure. No immediate plans. Okay, we're almost done. Let's get this finished up. So we want to clean off the ends, and they're a little bit long. I can do some of it. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to use the edge sander. I've got a fairly new 100 grit belt in there. Now, this is one of the advantages of having a big shop and having all these tools. Turn on the dust collector because this thing is dirty. Laying the flat side down. Now we'll clean up this edge. And I do this just so that I'm using more of the paper. This will be a quick one. Get rid of the saw marks. Now this one needs to be cut. I'll go over the chop saw real quick. I don't want to have to sand all that off. Jeff O'Connor was in our class. Yeah, first class we taught here, which was April of last year. May. And Jeff was probably one of the most influential students we ever had in terms of his impact on the other vets and the civilians in the class. He was just awesome. A real credit to his family name. All right, now I've got a branding iron right here that's already hot and ready to go. So right on the back. That ought to make it worth something. What? All right. Final step is to cut some chamfers on this. Where's my little squirrel tail? Always cut down. If you cut up like that, you're going to lift fibers. I got it. Now this, just because when I carry it from like this, so I want to get those off. That corner, I mean.
Somebody wants to know, will putting all the screws in line increase the chances of crack developing? I know pre-drilling reduces splitting. Can it weaken the piece if the screws are all in line?
They're far enough apart, and I purposely went in and pre-drilled those with with a bit that was the size of the root on the screw. So if you were to measure right in there below the threads or the bottom of the threads, this stuff is hard enough, and I've worked with it enough to know that if you don't do that, you may risk splitting something, especially near the end. But now I'm going to just knock the corner off that MDF. This one is just a little bit harder because you get them tight, so I move in with this little squirrel tail, and it allows me to get most of that. A little bit over here.
Rob, have you seen the new Woodpecker's one-time tool chamfer plane?
No, I haven't. Who asked me that?
Joe K.
No, Joe, I haven't. Get rid of all your sharp corners just because you don't want splinters. Do these bottom ones.
Bob Abbott wants to see the brand.
Bobbert. Hold on. Now, Bob is very patient. He's been waiting for this since yesterday. He thought the broadcast was last night, so he's been sitting on his couch with his laptop. Bob was also, I got a couple things to say here. Bob was also one of our former students. In fact, Bob volunteered to come back and help teach at our last workshop. And that's something we're now going to implement. We already are getting ready to do it, which means every time we teach, we're going to bring a former student back and have an opportunity to reconnect.
Jack Lane wants to know if you prefer the squirrel tail to the LN 102.
Yeah, I have both. I'm just getting rid of this glue in here. The squirrel tail, I wouldn't say they're almost two different planes. The 102, which is right here, I got the blade out of it. I used the blade. Is a little bit bigger. So for the job I'm doing, I like that little squirrel tail. Jake, remind me to get a blade for that. I took it. Where did we use it for? Made a scrub plane out of it, didn't we?
Actually, the blade's right above it.
Yeah, we needed an extra scrub plane for one of the vets in the class. Okay, now we will have everybody here tonight sign this. Huh?
That there's no chance of cracking here because you didn't drill them all straight.
Yeah,
It was on purpose.
that's right. By design. By design. What's our date?
25th, I think.
What's the date?
25.
25? PHP, January 25, 2020. I'll sign it, Jake will sign it, Frick will sign it, Megan will sign it, and Ken will sign it. And we will find a home for it. Now, I'm going to spray this a couple of coats, and that'll work beautifully well.
Bob wants to see the brand.
Brand right there.
It's
Let's check this. I'll get my 6-inch square. Put my blade in. Now, the way I like to check it, where's my shim? Is I'm going to take my 1 thou shim. I'm going to set it in here. Okay. What? I'm pushing the square tight to the blade, to the bottom of the plane, pushing that in, and I feel contact there, and I feel contact there. So I would say that's within 1/1000th of an inch. Pardon? Check it that way. Where's my other little square? I just had it. Nice and square, bang on the money. And it's got that curve in it. So, see if you can get a look at that, Jake. If you can sight down there and you'll see the curve. You see it?
Mhm.
It's a healthy one. I got to get rid of that glue right in there too. Now, when you're using this, you're going to push some of the curve out because you're bearing down like that, which only serves again to help you. I would once we coat this, you can wax your plane. Actually, you don't need to wax this. I've got to go in and remove. I've got some glue in here. Actually, got quite a bit.
What do you spray it with? Lynn wants to know.
I'm going to spray it with. I'll do that after. It's too much work. Becker Chroma lacquer. So there's your shooting board. How's our time? Ooh, we gotta hurry.
TikTok.
Okay. So last chance to make your donation. Remember, every $25 increment, get your name in the hat one more time for our draw. Manoli never showed up. Did the door get locked? He may be out there banging on the door.
Who?
Manoli?
Did the door get locked?
Was the door locked out there? He was going to come and
I
play.
didn't lock it. He
All right.
never texted you back when I said,
Okay.
"Are you gonna make it?"
So we have two things we're raffling off. Set up 5.5, and the shooting board we just built. We doing a final countdown, Frick?
Yeah, we'll give them 2 more minutes.
Any final questions, Ken?
Nope.
How many people do we have on?
577.
577?
We were as high, I believe, as 608. 611.
That's good. That's wonderful. Really appreciate the support that you folks give us for our Purple Heart project. It means a lot to these people. It means a lot to us.
Wanna
And
post a
it
link one
enables
more
us
time,
to be able to do it.
I did.
What? Did you get a close up on the hat? Final shout out to Micah Payne. Appreciate it. Actually, we got all kinds of stuff up here from various vets. That came from Moose. This came from Philip Gustafson. This Purple Heart one came from, member? Oh, I see him on Facebook all the time. No. Oh, was it Richard? Oh, maybe it was Richard.
Oh, no.
This Marine hat was, dog trainer.
Someone wants to know why you use sanding instead of planing. When you use sanding instead of planing.
When?
Like, how do you know? How do you know when to use sanding? Or
Well, that's plywood, and I had to get it done. It's utilitarian, and I just wanted to clean up the surface. I always plane as number one option. If you want a nice finished surface, use a hand plane. You can literally finish right from the plane. You don't have to do anything beyond that. In fact, anything you do with sandpaper beyond that's going to degrade the surface. On something utilitarian like that, I wasn't going to take the time to plane the surface of that plywood. It's going to get beat up. I just wanted it cleaned up so I can spray it, and hopefully it'll give somebody a lot of service for a long time.
All right.
Yeah?
I think we should
Let's
turn
do
it
the
over to
draw.
Turn it over to Megan.
Megan.
Okay,
Yeah,
Megsy,
give me a second.
what do you got? What are we doing first, the plane or the shooting board? Oh, you got to add in another guy 4 times that he where's my phone? He made a donation. Where's my phone? This one?
Today, right?
Earlier today, yeah. I told him I would include it.
No, I was.
Just a second, I'll give it to you. Orders. I just talked to him tonight. We had a long conversation. Here, just a second. I'll find it quick.
Still don't.
Richard McCorder.
Okay, wait, you gotta give me.
McCorder. That's it right there. And he donated $100, so put him in 4.
The Americans should know that this is their one opportunity to get a 5.5 with the prep service.
Yes, that's right. So if you're an American and you've wanted to buy a 5.5 with Jake and Rob's prep service, we can't do it for you because we can't sell Wood River Plains back into the U.S. But this is the exception to the rule. Don't forget that. And I should tell you that the nationality of, we've had 88 vets to date. We've had 1 Aussie, Ash, down in Australia. We've had 4 Canadians, and the other 83 were U.S. soldiers. I really don't care where they come from. They served their country. They served all free people. But majority of them are U.S. soldiers. And America, we live close enough to the border. I lived 10 years in the United States. Megan is from Utah. Ken's wife is American. Ken was actually born in Maine. Frick lived for 2 years down in the U.S. Jake lived in the U.S. for 2 years.
Great place.
So we are our heart sits in half and half. And of the 36 of the first how many? We chose 36 of the 36 vets that we have coming this summer. We have 3 Canadians. Huh? Oh no, the first. Pardon me. Do we have 3 of the first 18? Yeah, that's a high number.
Jake,
We have 3 Canadians out of the first 18.
how do I put this into a?
Here, just a sec.
Yeah, you like to do that?
Yeah,
All right, that's everybody.
it's ready to go.
Almost.
What are you waiting on?
Well, we copied all the names, and now we got to get it into the.
Megan, have you been typing names the whole time?
Yeah.
Somebody asked, do all donations this evening go towards the auction?
Pardon?
All donations
They go towards the raffle.
All the donations tonight go towards this raffle. We're giving these two things we're giving away. The donation money all goes to Purple Heart Project for this year's vets, starting in May. Remember, we have 6, 7, 8, 9 spots left for civilians out of the 36. Which one are you doing first?
It's up to you.
Okay, what are we gonna do first, Jake? Plane. Okay, so the first one is for the plane. The 5.5 is going to
Get the camera over here so we're not cheating. All right, all the names are in.
pick a random name.
Pick a random name. It's going through. The
The
winner is.
Got to go to the bottom. Let's go to the bottom.
You guys know how to work that thing?
Derek Boselka.
He's the one who donated the $1,000.
Really? Awesome. Derek, good things come to you. That is fantastic. Thank you, Derek. Please accept it. Everybody keeps giving the stuff back. We want you to have it.
You do this one, Megan.
This is for the shooting board. Kenneth Dove. Do you know where he's from?
Find it.
Kenneth Dove, you'll get a shooting board. Make sure we have your address.
Lake, Wisconsin. Lake Geneva.
Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Congratulations, gentlemen. Okay, any final comments? Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Frick. Pardon me, I'm eating a grape. I'm starving. Our next one will be in about 2 or 3 weeks, and I think we're going to be doing the sled. We're going to make a table saw sled, a super duper table saw sled. Thank you to all our combat wounded vets that are viewing tonight. We appreciate you for all that you do. And please spread the word so that as many as possible can have an opportunity to come to our workshop. You guys have a great night, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.